Future Hacker. Life. Path. Future.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Future Hacker. I'm your host, Maria Taiji, and today we're talking to Denis Chamas. Denis has been leading global digital transformation teams for over a decade in companies like Unilever and Cisco and renowned agencies like F.biz and Wunderman. Today, he's responsible for the innovation and transformation front at Philip Morris. He owns a master's degrees in digital design and intelligence technologies, studied radical innovation at MIT, and became a Certified Futurist and Specialist in Strategic Foresight at the Institute for the Future in Silicon Valley. He also works as a professor at Miami Ed School and leads the Startup Rad Lab, focused on technological maturity research and cognition hacking. So you guys can see he's a true future hacker, right? Hello, Denis. It's so great to have you with us today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for inviting me, Maria. It's a huge pleasure to be here once again.
Yeah, so for any Brazilian that might be listening to us, so Denis already gave us an amazing interview in the Brazilian channel. So the interview is in Portuguese, so make sure you listen to that. But, we didn't want to leave the international listeners outside that. So we are doing this other episode in English. So thanks so much for your availability, Denis.
No, again, it's a pleasure. Anytime, just let me know. I'll be here.
That's awesome. You say you are in continuous search for unconventional solutions to accelerate desirable futures. So how's that? And how have you been able to integrate the future studies to large organizations' strategic roadmap, given it's like such a long-term strategy when they're talking about future studies and innovation against the short-term KPIs companies usually focus their energy on?
Well, first thing is to be humble enough to understand that you are dealing with the hard work of lots of people that probably know much more about the subject than you ever dream about. So by doing that, you can start understanding where the real issues are. You can really connect and enable them to start understanding some basic concepts of foresight and how they can be helpful to add more clarity to the current work in planning. So it's basically connecting and try to give them an extra layer of confidence and concepts to understand the world, to think about the futures, and start engaging, starting to make a difference in the current planning.
And how have you been able to deal with those expectations when you are at large companies? I've been talking to a lot of people that are chief transformation officers and chief innovation officers. And what is most criticized is that companies usually work with those short-term KPIs, right? And areas like, especially when it comes to innovation, it's not something that you can measure on a quarterly basis. It's something that is within the culture, and it might take, years for a company to actually be able to see some results. How to deal with that?
It's very hard to give a precise answer for that, but I think as long as we can move towards a more inclusive culture, a more understanding pattern of considering the signals, considering the possibilities, and we start moving and preparing to those, I think that's a best way of doing that. So we can try to reflect that on KPIs and OKRs, whatever it's built or required. It's a process of, maturing and nurturing this kind of culture. I think you are very precise when you define that as a cultural issue. And I strongly agree with that, because that's a pretty famous phrase that culture eats a strategy on the breakfast. So I guess that's the way I think.
Yeah, it's a great phrase indeed. So what do you think it takes for a company to truly incorporate an innovative and transformational culture? And in which cases do you think it should be an internal transformation versus maybe an alliance with a startup that is from outside and it's ahead of the time?
Well, in my point of view, it's about how hungry, a company is for change. I mean, there are several companies that are, on burning platforms, but they will go nowhere. They are not interested. They just want to cut their losses and cash out. So that makes all the difference for me, because it reflects how painful or wonderful, because this process can be really exciting and understanding. That's how it makes or break it. So it's all about that feeling, that you are working hard on something for many hours, and it's so exciting and it's so, amazing, and you just want to be part of that, That's what I mean, this kind of feeling. And about startups, that's a very tricky subject, because most of the times companies think and treat them as a way of, getting cheaper vendors on board, or as a PR marketing stunt, So in my point of view, the key here is not the startup itself, it's about, the ecosystem. So if you try to help the ecosystem be there somehow, that whole give first approach, and then this whole experience, can lead to real partnership and, really making open innovation reality. That can also, works wonders, on your company in regards to the transformation, and also about the sensibilization of new ways of working by your team, So that can really makes a difference. It's not a matter of, just connecting with startups and, internal transformation. It's a whole process. It's a whole journey that you need to go through. And I think that will be my perspective on that. And I do believe that's a good one, actually.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense to me. It's really sad what you see happening in the market when you mention that, you have all those cases of companies that are reaching out to startups not to be adding value, and it goes both ways, right? But just to get a cheaper vendor. And also the cases when the big corporations buy, they have an acquisition of small startups, and then the business ends up dying because they are forcing another type of culture into something that is supposed to be more agile and innovative. And that's happening a lot as well, right?
Yeah, we can even see big tech companies, big modern companies, when they acquire each other and it doesn't work well, So it's not a matter of, just old companies, very traditional companies making, merger and acquisition. It's a culture change, And again, culture is like a very central topic, and we always need to be aware of that and try to make it have its value on the equation. I think it's one of the key topics that we may have.
Yeah, that's for sure. So still talking about those innovation departments, do you see this area already embracing ESG principles, or are those topics still being treated separately within the corporations? What's your thought?
Well, actually, being 100% honest, I don't see that today, but I'm super impressed on how fast this is changing, The amount of stuff that we've been able here, especially in Brazil, which is where I'm based, the conversations, the events, the discussions, the articles published. So it's very impressive how it's going and moving fast. So I think my answer today is that I don't see it, but if you ask me in a couple of months or maybe weeks, my answer can be completely different, but that's a very interesting subject to follow up, especially in Brazil, because it's moving very, very fast.
And this is wonderful, right? I think it's thanks to those big companies, and especially the investors. I think at the end is where the money is laying, right? Companies like BlackRock and just investing on companies that are making a positive impact. I think the leaders are now seeing that it's not a choice anymore, it's not differential, but it's going to become an obligation pretty soon. So you either start planning about it now, or, you're going to get up in trouble after the new generations. They just start owning the pockets, right?
Yeah, I think in regards to that, I think the whole system that we have, the way it's built, the way that we make money, is still lots of question, and how positive, let's say, it is, and how companies and shareholders make money. So that's still a big question mark on how we can make that more positive for the whole planet. But again, it's a good subject to take in account and to observe how it's going to move, because it's bounded to drive really positive changes in the market and in the industry. So I'm super excited about that. That's wonderful news, actually.
Okay, so let's move on by covering a topic that, by itself could be an entire episode, which is data, facts, and information. So you recently posted on LinkedIn a comment regarding making the data cry. So could you please explain this expression and what types of situations are we talking about and what would be the consequences?
No, yeah, absolutely. Actually, that's a quote that I took from a friend, Guido. Shout out to Guido. Hope he's doing fine. And, well, data is a very sensitive topic. So a lot of companies are embarking or already taking advantage of that. So although we are moving pretty fast, a good portion of our leaders are still not ready to make, the right questions for their teams, Thinking about that, most of the results that we can see, on strategy and things that we are plotting and we're trying to reach, they are based on data that sometimes, they are not exactly reliable. And also, we always try to find data that, could support our point of views, that can validate previously existing points of views. So that's pretty risky. That's a lot of people that still operates on that. And I think the solution, the way of moving forward to that is by having, some data literacy across all the company, because this is fundamental, again, to make the right questions to the team, to prepare, to understand, to have better and more, advanced discussions on those subjects, because it's purely on decision making, and that, reflects on the whole company. So maybe moving forward, that is one of the key skills for a near future, and I think that could be super helpful for us to drive growth and evolve as an organization, and that can be reflected in our cities and our society. So that's my point of view. Data literacy is just fundamental to avoid any kind of mistakes or bad perspectives on that.
You're so right about that, Denis. And according to this EY Megatrends report, we are entering a new kind of Cold War, which is the Techonomic War. So within it, there's a new type of attack, which is the disinformation. The target is not a place or money, it's the truth itself. And we're seeing that a lot already, but the trend is that it's going to be even worse. So how do you see that? And how do you think that we, as company leaders and as regular people, should be getting prepared for this type of combat?
Well, I guess there are so many angles about this topic, but again, being very honest, I think it's time for the people, to be responsible for their acts, to really stand up for something. And companies are made of people, so I think that's the time, we cannot run away from that anymore. And I understand, from time to time, for company to company, it can get really blurry, to navigate in that space, to understand what you should stand and the consequences of that. But I think that's something that future studies can really help, to really try to, give more perspective, give more pictures and, scenarios of what we can happen in the future. So taking that in consideration, I think it's just a matter of, most of the times being hyper connected to what's happening here in the present, Again, it really helps if you can, rely on future studies and be prepared for that.
And, following that line of trying to be prepared about, whatever is coming in the future, and, all this discussion around data and credibility and disinformation, whatever the future is bringing us is going to be making it really hard for us to distinguish what is truth and what is not, thanks to the advancements in synthetic media. Ensuring authenticity will be critical to any business and any public figures. Are companies making enough investment in this area? Is something that people should be already getting prepared to work on? Or do you think that maybe within the advancements of exactly those same technologies of synthetic media, you feel that we are going to be able to keep protecting ourselves and having, the same advancements in those shields, maybe even through blockchains, just as fast? Where would you be betting your coins on?
Well, that's a very good question as well. I know perma monitoring is here. There are few experiments in tech that are very exciting on that space, but I would like to reframe, this reflection into another direction, because we tend to go always, on very negative space about, and, think about this topic, futures and etc. But if you think about the access to synthetic experience that you can have, and the possibilities of that, of learning, of experiencing something different, so that can be super exciting as well. I'm a huge music fan, so I wonder how cool it would be to have, my favorite musicians, my favorite bands playing more often here in my city or maybe in my living room. That would be super, super interesting, and especially now in this pandemic time, that could be the next standard for a couple of years. So just to emphasize how interesting that can be as well. And as I said, there are several funded projects about that, and the space is very rich and that it's very, very, again, exciting. But the point is that blockchain is an amazing technology. I think there are several ways that we can see that playing a key role in the future, but it's not the only tool that we may have available. So there's amounts of ways of securing that and try to validate things and put more reliability on this whole scenario. But we can also think about the future where we do not need to worry about that, where people will not be willing or needing to lie to each other or to commit crimes. So we can think about that as well. That will be an interesting scenario.
Hearing that from someone that is into future studies, right, Denis? For sure, playing the scenarios is super cool and exciting. But, thinking now about everything we covered today, we talked about innovation, transformation, and how it's important to, make a positive impact in the world as a company, being responsible about data usage and information. So there's this question that I have to ask you. You work at a tobacco company. So when I checked it out on LinkedIn, I was actually surprised to read the following on their page. We are on the path to achieving something incredible to make history and deliver a smoke-free future. So it's pretty impressive. I wouldn't expect that. So what's your personal view? Could it be maybe an example of those companies that completely pivot and transform their business according to the change on consumer behavior and demand?
Okay, so since I'm a person that's very connected to technology and to future studies, that I'm a really enthusiast of the subject, being part of a change in that sense, being part to see and help and participate, it's very exciting to see something like that happen, Most people are always talking about case studies, about things that other people did or are doing today or in the past, and I'm able to see that happen as we speak, so being a protagonist of that. So for me, it's very interesting, and as I said, I do think that it's a matter of how hungry the company is to make this change. And Philip Morris is very eager to make this change, to make changes to its product, to its company, and the way that we operate on global levels. So being here, it's amazing, because it's not only about talking about the transformation, talking about innovation. It's really trying to make it happen, really trying to move it forward. So I'm super excited and honored to be in this journey with the team and in the company. So as a futurist and an innovator, I think I'm in a very interesting place to learn and to contribute somehow.
That's awesome. That's so cool, Denis. And you know what? Maybe do you have a piece of advice with all this experience you have to people that are trying to find their way to innovation and to be better prepared to all those uncertainties out there? What's your advice?
Well, I don't really like to give advices, because I think any people has, its way of learning and understanding, seeing the world. But if I could say something, I think, getting as much perspective as you can, so if you are in the industry, try to go to the academic space, to a university, or to talk to anybody into another space to see what their references are, their ways of working, understanding, why they look for some stuff. That can be very helpful. That also makes sense for the entrepreneur space, how you can connect and see different ways of working, different realities, different business making and all that stuff. So that can really help you see the world besides, the cubicle that you work in your day by day in the borders of your company, So perspective is key. And I'm super excited that, again, having the opportunity to be in this podcast with you guys. And this podcast it's a great window, for different opinions, different perspectives. I would just recommend it because it's super cool. So that will be my recommendation.
Thank you so much. That was lovely. Thanks for being again with us. And the doors will always be open here for you at Future Hacker, Denis. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Future Hacker. Life. Path. Future.